A Google Hangout in honor of MS Awareness Month. We're talking with three people who made life changes and pursued passions through their MS diagnosis. As you may know, my husband Richard was diagnosed with MS when he was 25, so obviously the topic is very personal to my family. We have a great group joining us today, starting with Van DiBernardo and Maureen Manley, and coming to us all the way from Ireland, Travis L. Gleason. Welcome to all of you.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you.
Sure. We're going to be talking about your lives before MS in a minute. But first, let's talk about your current careers. And then I'm going to start with you. You're joining us from Buffalo. After your diagnosis, you started a company that manufactures cooling vests, and I see one behind you. Can you briefly tell us about this concept?
Well, I'm heat intolerant, and I needed to stay cool during the summer months and overheating with exercise. So I started wearing an industrial cooling vest, and I really did not like the looks of it. So I designed a better looking one, and it's brought many people some comfort in looking more normal, if you will.
Exactly, because you're addressing the person, not the patient. I think that's something you once said.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I don't want to be. I'm sorry.
No, you go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying, I don't really want to be identified as a patient outside of a hospital.
And I love that vest, not just because it's really good looking, but I know my husband Richard suffers from the same, as do many people with MS, that when you get overheated, it kicks in so many things. For him, he really gets extremely weak in terms of walking. So I'm gonna be ordering one of those for sure. Maureen, I want to move over to you. You are a former professional athlete and started your company Spirit in Motion to actually motivate and empower people living with MS. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. You know, the business was really born out of my own inquiry. More than 23 years ago, when I was diagnosed with MS, there weren't any treatments for MS, and I really wanted to learn what I could do to optimize my health and well-being. And I really set out on a journey to learn what I could do. I was an exercise scientist and studied nutrition, but I needed to know more about the mental and emotional and spiritual components about really optimizing health and overall well-being. So now I help individuals with MS and also teach within corporations how to optimize performance, resilience, and well-being.
When you give a speech and talk to people, what response do you get back?
You know, what I get a lot is, and I really love this, I feel like I nailed it when people say, I never thought about it that way, and thank you. Because I opened up doors of possibilities in their own awareness of what they can do while living with MS or while living with or having any particular challenge, that there's still things that they can do. They can still shine through and live the life that they want in spite of having a significant challenge in their life.
Yeah, because I think when you first get that diagnosis, at least Richard said to me, you feel like life is over.
Yeah.
As you knew it, and that's a very devastating thing to come through.
It is a devastating thing, and I didn't want it to be the end of my story. You know, the devastation, the awfulness, and kind of the backward thinking kind of metaphors that were used, like this is awful and loss, and it's like, no, I don't want this to be the end of my story. I want this to be the beginning.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm going to move now to Travis. You were an accomplished chef, and you now pursue your writing full-time, so tell us about your latest projects.
Yes, I have been writing for Everyday Health. Words and writing have always been a passion, but I believed a high school teacher who told me I'd never be a writer, so I didn't do that. But through blogging now for nearly 9 years for Everyday Health, and I also do some blogging for the National MS Society, the MS Society of Ireland, and of the UK. And just earlier this month, much to the chagrin, I'm sure, of that old teacher, I released my first book. It's called Chef Interrupted.
Good for you. Is that teacher still around?
You know, I really don't care, Meredith.
I'm just going to give it to him, you know, but that says everything. When people say you can't do something, darn it, go ahead and try, because 9 times out of 10 you try and succeed.
I believed it for a good long time, and
yeah.
I left one of those bits of my passions along the roadside for far too long.
You know what's interesting too? It's that your illness led you to that, to be able to get rid of that feeling about yourself and to try it and to not only do it but to succeed, and that is something very special. I mean, you all of you, amazing achievements, but you were all very accomplished before being diagnosed. Maureen, you were a member of the U.S. cycling team, and I know you started experiencing symptoms while riding in the women's Tour de France. What happened?
Well, at the start of the event, start of the Women's Tour de France, it's a stage race, so we're going to be racing every day for, I think it was 10 days. And I was really determined to do well because I just didn't do so well at the World Championships prior to that. So at the beginning of the event, I was looking around at the start line. I could see all the different jerseys represented from all the different riders around the country, and I'm so proud to be in the Stars and Stripes. And the race took off, and as we began the first mountain climb, my vision began to blur pretty severely, and the more I pushed myself, the more my vision was blurring. And what I now know is that optic neuritis is something that affects people with MS, and it was affecting me, though I didn't know it at the time, so I keep pushing forward. And by the time I reached the top of the mountain, my vision had blurred so severely I lost my sight completely. And it was at that time, I didn't know it, but I couldn't see, and I was veering over to the side of the road, and it was then that my tires hit the gravel along the side of the road, and I felt my wheels sliding out from underneath me, and I found myself crashing to the ground.
That had to be extremely frightening to suddenly lose your vision.
Yes, it was. It was extremely frightening, and so radically confusing as to why this was happening. I mean, I was able to ride my bicycle, though I wasn't feeling all that great.
Yeah.
I was still determined to ride at a world-class level, but losing my vision and crashing, and it was obvious to myself, my teammates, and my coaches that I needed to come back to the States and see a doctor, find out what was going on with me, and they did indeed find MS.
I want to go over to Van now, because before your MS diagnosis, you were a shoe designer for DKNY. So how did your MS symptoms affect your work?
Well, like Maureen, it started with my eyes. And part of my job was to shop the market and get familiar with what's already out there. And I can remember being in a shoe department. So it's like Maureen's experience with the cliff. It was just a carpet. And there I am in Milan and realizing I'm seeing double of everything. And I had many issues with my sight. And that affected how I designed and how I was prepared for designing. And eventually it got into my drawing, and that was the most disturbing part. I could handle difficulty walking, but not drawing.
Why do you say that?
Oh, well, because part of my responsibilities was to communicate what I wanted to do and what I was feeling for in shoes, and I would draw a shoe and the concept of what I wanted as far as toe character and heel height, etc. So that was my mode of communication, and it was affected severely, where I could no longer hold a pencil. It was so extreme.
Yeah, I mean, that's your passion. That was your passion. So to come to that point where I can't do this anymore is very unsettling.
Yeah, I went down fighting it, and luckily I was surrounded with people that cared and that wanted to help me to deal with the changes, like Donna and my direct boss, and people like that were very good to me. So I'm grateful for that.
Which is wonderful, because sometimes with diagnosis of MS, it's the opposite. My husband has often said, when he's spoken about this, that his boss told him, he worked at CBS News, told him, if we knew you had MS, we wouldn't have hired you, which is so interesting. I think it's a lot of the reason why people with MS often don't reveal it to people in the workplace, because they're worried about the reaction.
I felt like Richard. I felt like I wanted to keep it a secret, but eventually it was no longer an option. And I tried my best to look like everybody else, but eventually that's not possible. And it didn't matter to Donna either. So that was great.
Donna Karen.
Yeah. I was very grateful for that. And so that was wonderful.
Travis, if I can ask you, you were a chef in Seattle when you were diagnosed. How did your MS symptoms affect you in the kitchen and doing your job?
Well, certainly heat sensitivity was part of it. I just didn't realize it at the time. And by the time that I was diagnosed, I had probably had symptoms for better than 15 years before that I just sort of either powered through or sometimes were misdiagnosed or would just sort of ignore if I could. But by the time that it came that I was diagnosed, they were stroke-like symptoms, and and like most professions, the higher you go up in the job, the less of the thing you do. So by that point, I was traveling about 250,000 miles a year, flying around and training other chefs and things like that. So the fatigue, the getting through airports, all of that, it just sort of came crashing down. It was something of a blessing, I suppose, that the real bastard of itself, this disease, showed itself when it took away some elements of my ability to taste, both sweet and later salt, until I had retired from being a chef.
You know what? I don't think I knew that was a symptom of MS, that it can affect your sense of taste.
It's funny that you'd say that, but when I described to my medical team what was going on, that I had lost the sense of salt, they had told me, well, we've heard of people losing their sense of taste before or smell, but not a specific sense of taste. And I said, well, do you have a patient that happens to have a classically trained palate? So I was able to describe to them this relatively new symptom, or it was a symptom that people had experienced before, but maybe not been able to express. And by that point, I had started writing again. So I think all of us who live with MS, some live a little bit in the metaphor, and so I was able to use those metaphors in my writing, and then helping to explain the symptoms to my doctors.
When you say live a little bit in the metaphor, people with MS, talk to me a little bit more about that.
Oh, geez, we have to describe our symptoms to people, be it to our family, our friends, our coworkers, etc. So in order for us to get them to understand what it is that we're going through, we come up with whatever metaphors we can so that they can maybe get just a little peek inside the window. And certainly when writing the blog for 9 years and now the book, I've really found that, but the more metaphors I throw out there, the more spaghetti I throw at the wall to see what sticks, somebody grabs onto one of those and they say, now I get it.
Yeah, because, to this day, and like I said, Richard was diagnosed when he was 25, and so I've been schooled in MS and what the symptoms are. At least I thought I knew them until you mentioned that latest one. And I feel pretty knowledgeable about the illness, but it's amazing how many people still don't get it, still don't really understand what MS is. So I think what you're doing is incredibly powerful and important. But I want to move on and talk about all of your motivations and also what keeps you inspired. Van, I'll start with you. How did you find the motivation to launch a company at a time when you were also struggling with your health? That's a lot to take on.
Well, as far as I see it, I didn't really have a choice. I needed to build something for myself, but I built it for my friends and people who had this need to stay cool, because I felt that was a huge problem of mine. It affects being overheated. It would affect my cognitive thought process, and I don't really do very well being half the person I am right now. And so the cooling vest helps me to stay on track and stay on task. So I started the company with my sister, and we've just been at it for many years, and the rest is history, if you will.
So, but is that what sort of keeps you going? Because you're not only helping yourself, you're really making a difference in the lives of a lot of people.
Well, thank you, Meredith. I look forward to being able to meet Richard, and I would love to be able to send him a vest, because everybody that gets this vest really speaks about how effective it is and that they really like the vest. So that's true to my heart, and I feel happy to be able to share it.
Yeah, and the truth is, without the vest, you would not be able to do your job half as well as you do.
Correct. There's many things that I just cannot do when I'm overheated. And
so, go ahead.
I was going to say, and as Maureen possibly would say, in an athletic world, it cuts you off with being able to do the many things that you can because of heat sensitivity. So,
how do people get your vest? I should put that information out there.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
How does somebody get your vest?
Oh, they can go to cooltour.net, and it's COOLTURE.net.
It's sort of a takeoff on couture.
You got it.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Because that's my first love is women's shoes, ironically, and clothing. So that was the whole thing with the name, but it's gone on beyond that, and it's helping people that with their swimming, with golf, and many different activities. So and when you go to cooltour.net, you'll be able to read about all the different people that it does help.
Fantastic. I'm sure a lot of people will be going there right after this Google Hangout. Maureen, how do you think your experiences as an athlete prepared you to start your company?
Well, you know, I was always, as a person, as an athlete, I always aspired to things. And in that aspiration, I always would learn. The aspiration doesn't come with the knowledge of how to achieve it, but going after learning how it is that I can achieve what I want to, and then surrounding myself with a team of people that can really inspire and help me get to where I want to go, and then of course to put it all into motion and to stay active and to shine through and keep moving on with my life, because we all have purpose and meaning, and that's what's important to, you know, to create for ourselves, and then keep moving forward and surround ourselves with the knowledge and the support that we need to keep moving in spite of the challenges that we face.
In what way, Maureen, is it sort of like what you used to do when you were riding bikes, racing?
It's you know, what I loved about racing is challenging myself and knowing myself at deeper and new levels, and discovering what was possible, and really trailblazing and doing new things that I've never done before. And then even some, you know, I'm a national champion. There's things that I've done that you know, wouldn't have happened without me going for it. And I think in that spirit of trailblazing and you know, being purposeful in life and enjoying it is very transferable. It's my spirit, you know. I can't stop myself.
Exactly. Having interviewed a lot of athletes who've suffered adversities in their life, physical adversities, there is something about the mentality of an athlete that prepares them. I mean, you can't be totally prepared for something like MS, but there is something, I think, in the psyche of an athlete that helps them.
I think so too. You know, when I was first diagnosed, people would say, "Do you ever wonder, you know, why me?" And it's like, for me, my mental process, that didn't make sense, because it was more how me. How do I get after this? What do I need to learn? What do I need to do? How do I get into motion with you know, even what I don't know yet, I'm going to find out the answers. And these are the things that I studied in graduate school, you know, like what are the behaviors of people that do well? And it's interesting, it's the same behaviors of people that are athletes, and do well business, and people that do well with health challenges. It's all the same stuff.
Travis, I want to move over to you. How does being part of the MS community actually inspire you in your writing?
Are you talking to me? Are you talking to me?
Yeah, I am.
I'm inspired by. I'm sorry.
I'm talking Travis.
No, you're grand, Van. You're an inspiration to me, Van. Trust me. When I have the opportunity to interact in person, because so much of what we do is online anymore, and certainly a lot of the work I do with the blogs, etc. When I get a chance to meet somebody in person or meet a group and have a chat, and to know that the information that I might have access to that is difficult for others, etc., and that I can pass that along, it makes me feel like what I'm doing does have a purpose, in a way that maybe the stuff that I did before maybe didn't have as much of a purpose.
Well, you sort of are. You're still cooking, baby. I'll tell you. On all four burners, that's for sure.
I think all of us who have lost a career, if you will, or who have had to change careers, we all have a set of skills that made us successful at some level doing whatever it was before. For me, it was managing multiple kitchens in a hotel, or arranging international financing for a granary in Ukraine, or whatever.
Maureen, Maureen, you've talked openly about fighting the changes that MS has made to your body. How were you finally able to turn that around?
You know, what happened with me is one time when the MS was really hitting me hard. I couldn't walk well and I couldn't see well. And it was at that time that I really said to myself, this is it. This is my life, and I need to stop pushing MS away and really focus on what it is that I can do. And again, going back to that, you know, the things that of my spirit and of my psyche are the freedom, the joy, the self-expression, pushing myself, knowing myself at deeper levels. And really, at one point, I had to let cycling go and say, how else can I live the dreams that want to live in, through, and as me? Mm-hmm. And I can still experience joy, camaraderie, and push myself at deeper levels. And but I have to let go of just this one idea of how it has to be and open myself up to other things. And I had a lot of other interests that I could begin to pursue.
Well, what I admire about all of you is you have come full circle back to the passions that were important to you before your diagnosis. So we only have a few minutes left. Travis, we know that cooking was obviously a big part of your life before MS. Does it play any role in your life now? Food?
You know, certainly. In fact, I would have to say that moving to this tiny little community in Ireland in a lot of ways has reignited. I see the simplicity of the ingredients, the amazing quality of the fish or the produce you know, most of what we eat is grown or shot or raised or caught or whatever within just a few miles of us. So I think that closeness to the ingredients has reignited and made me reimagine the wonderfulness of simple foods, and certainly the people here and the way that they cook these simple foods has been an inspiration.
Yeah, and how those foods contribute to wellness.
Well, you know, I would have to say that I feel better with the foods that we eat here. I just do.
Well, Van, let me ask you, with your company, you're still able to use your skills as a designer. Why is it important for people living with MS to make adjustments and yet still pursue their dreams?
Well, are you talking to me, Meredith?
Yes, I am.
Well, it's important to get to a point where you acknowledge your changes in your limits, but with that acknowledgement, you make changes within yourself about what you can do. I have gone through what both Maureen and Travis have said, and we're all kind of the same, if you will. Mm-hmm. But you make these changes and you keep going for, okay, what is that goal? And you keep that in sight and you go for it, whether it's food or shoes or a cycle, and you work it.
You know, is there a moment, because I'm sure there are people watching this who are not there yet. You know, like I said, they might have been newly diagnosed. They can't even imagine being in the position that you three are now. Is there a moment where you just say, okay, I'm going to do this? How do you get to that point?
I'll jump in, and I'll say that I don't know that it's a moment. I often say that I was diagnosed overnight in 15 years.
Right.
So it's a process, and I would say more than anything is to keep an eye and a heart open to opportunities that may present themselves, and be willing to try something that you didn't think of but feels right.
Well,
go ahead, Maureen. Yeah.
I agree with Travis, but I've had many angry moments that helped me get to where I am. And it helped me to love the people that were around me more. And it wasn't about what they were doing for me. It was about how they were reacting to me. And maybe it was me recognizing how I reacted to myself with these changes with MS.
So anger was a good thing?
Yeah, well, yes, absolutely. Part of my process, and I say that openly, it was important because I've been gifted with so many wonderful things in my life with Donna and my family and people and all of that. So when it was those heated moments, I would get angry with myself with the disease, and then I'd realize, well, you know what? A lot of my problems and trying to go forward and go through my symptoms I was able to achieve that, was able to do that.
So that's so interesting. Maureen, I want to end with you now because I know that you've started to ride your bike again. RMS initially took away your ability to cycle. How does it feel to be back in the saddle, as they say?
Oh, it feels awesome, and it's so rewarding, and I say that because it wasn't something that was just handed to me. I wasn't cycling for 12 years. And
Wow.
12 years into my diagnosis, I got back into it. And how I got back into it was doing everything I encourage others to do, is to accept what it is that you have and continue to work with what it is that you can do. And there's a saying that one of my meditation teachers said to me once: as long as you can breathe, there's more things right with you than there are wrong. And so continuing to come back and contemplate what's possible versus kind of what I say, making camp in the problem, but continuing to do what I can do with what it is I had to work with. And I kept getting stronger and stronger over time with advancements of drug therapies and also doing my own integrative approach. And to my grand surprise, I found myself being able to race again and to be able to ride at a high level. But again, it was something I let go of. So that's why it's so rewarding. And being out there, being an example of staying after life, and also being able to raise money and awareness for MS and other causes, it's just a grand joy.
And when you're out there with the wind in your face, what are you thinking about?
Oh, I'm so grateful. You know, it's a piece of work. I'm not the cyclist that I was 24 years ago, but I I stay in gratitude. I'm fighting all sorts of obstacles, but I'm so grateful to be able to do it to the extent and as long as I can. And that can come from desire, and it can come from not being able to do it anymore. But I stay in and contemplate the possibilities and being resilient and managing my expectations, managing my disappointments. And I always want more, but staying in gratitude for what it is I have to do and being grateful for what it is I have is a joy.
Yeah, staying in gratitude is an important lesson for all of us to learn. I could talk to you guys for hours, but I'm getting the wrap-up cue on the Google Hangout. I just thank you so much for your time and your insight and your honesty, and I think that you have helped a lot of people and continue to by the things that you're doing, the motivational speaking, and obviously your writing and that amazing vest that I'm ordering for my husband. So thank you, Van DiBernardo, Maureen Manley, and Travis L. Gleason, all the way from Ireland. Thanks to everyone for tuning in today. And if you'd like to hear more about MS, check out everydayhealth.com. You are not alone. We're also posting a link below to our latest videos and articles. I thank you again. Have a great afternoon, a lovely evening. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.